Did you know that sales of mason jars went up massively in 2020? You know, those mason jars that maybe your grandparents used to develop their own kind of in-house jams or preserve other foods so that, you know, they can last forever in mason jars. And when I thought about that, I realized, you know, we're living in a time where end of the world scenarios are proliferate. I mean, there are a lot of ways that our world could end in our society. And what used to be the case with this apocalyptic thinking was that it was more like a fringe kind of thing. You know, you'd see some fringe religious person with the stereotypical sandwich board saying the end is nigh, walking down the street as all the business people were trying to get past them to get on with their lives. But in our day, it seems like this kind of thinking has really gone mainstream. And the question is, why? Why is apocalyptic kind of end of the world stuff becoming so common in our day? Hi, I'm Randy Lovejoy with randylovejoy.com, and this is another Under the Hood video where we test the assumptions underneath our views and opinions so that we can make wiser and more strategic decisions in the crazy time in which we find ourselves. So that's the question. Why do people become apocalyptic? Because we're not the only ones that have done this. This has happened in different times, in different places in history. And so why now? Well, as I've looked at that, one of the things I realized the function of apocalyptic for people is that it tends to give people a sense of certainty in uncertain times. Now, I know that seems a little counterintuitive at first. It's like, how can, being worried about the end of the world bring you certainty? But if you take a look at some past examples of it, you see that it's in the midst of all that uncertainty, if you have this kind of end of the world apocalyptic focus, it enables you to get clarity on what you need to do, where you are, who you are, and how you're going to kind of move forward and save the day. Let me just give you one example from a common source in our culture. I'll give you one example from the book of Revelation, where there's a lot of apocalyptic literature. There's a lot of talk that's very end of the world apocalyptic kind of stuff. And the letter of Revelation was written to people in the Roman Empire, people who had suffered or were suffering under Roman persecution and oppression. And this literature helped them to find a sense of grounding and a sense of certainty in a time where their lives were very uncertain and where they were not in control of what the future holds. So let's fast forward to our day today. We've been through pandemics, we've been through social and political unrest, we have all sorts of weather and climate change going on, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of things that we really don't control. And so end of the world scenarios and end of the world strategies help us to gain a sense of grounding in that time against really a world that who knows what the future is going to hold. So here's a couple of things we need to think about given the proliferation of kind of end of the world scenarios in our day and in our age. Some weaknesses of the way that we do apocalyptic. The first is that it tends to magnify our fear and anxiety. It just makes it grow. It builds on our fear and anxiety. And then from that, we see that we begin to be polarized as people because we gather together with people who agree with the end of the world scenario that we've committed to, that we're trying to solve, and we reject people that maybe we were in relationship with before, but people who now, if they don't agree with us in that end of the world scenario, then we push them aside as we move ahead. Another part of this that's really been worrying to me is that we tend to get rid of the complexities of the situations around us. And we need to see those complexities if we're going to actually come up with strategies that are going to solve the problems that we're struggling with. But we saw that even with the way that the pandemic was handled early on, there were these strategies thrown out. This is the way it's going to be done. This is how it's going to be handled. This is how we're going to solve it. And we're still here today. And that end of the world world apocalyptic approach tends to have difficulty with complexity. And the last thing is that there's really no sense that we're definitely going to win this thing. There's no sense that we're going to stop the end of the world in the way that we're doing it here. And so there's no joy. And really what there is just kind of power, that we need to get into power the people that agree with us so that we can avert the end of the world. That's all there is. But if you look at the way the Bible does apocalyptic, the biblical approach to it is such that it really works to move people from fear and anxiety into a situation where there's more generosity and hope. And if we're going to get through all of these challenges that we have before us, we're going to need an awful lot of generosity, an awful lot of faith and hope that's going to move us forward. And that's the way that the biblical approach to apocalyptic does it. That's the apocalyptic that we need to kind of get back to ourselves, is let's practice apocalyptic and into the world. It fits, it works with our strategy, but we've got to do it in a way that moves us forward together into the future that is in front of us. And speaking of that, I am going to be teaching a course called How to Read the Bible to Create Good in Your Life. And in that course, you're going to be equipped and empowered to be able to use material like the apocalyptic in the Bible in a way in your life that's going to create good in your relationships, in your community, and hopefully in our world. So remember that we want to regain the apocalyptic as it's in the Bible, that brings positivity, that brings hope, that enables us to develop strategies for the future. And I am looking forward to the future and walking through with you, but we've got to do it smartly, we've got to do it well, so that we can really take on a lot of these issues that we find ourselves dealing with today. Look forward to taking some time with you again on another Under the Hood video, where we'll look at some other assumptions that we have and try to test those so that we can create good in the world. Have an awesome day.